Hey everyone. So for today's show, we're going to get into some mailbag questions that I put out on the Locked On Penguins Twitter account. We're also going to get into some practice updates. Teddy Blueger is again getting close, so we'll get the latest on him. And we'll dive a little bit more into the New Jersey Devils, and of course touch on a couple of other things for this team as the Penguins get ready to play the Devils on Thursday. It's all coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this, your first listen of the day. Today's episode might be on the bit of a shorter side. I know usually my episodes are 25 to 30 minutes. This episode might be around 20 to 22. Obviously there's still things to talk about with the Penguins. I mean, there's never nothing to talk because, this team is never boring, but, with a third consecutive off day, obviously I'll always have stuff for you all, but, I'm itching for them to play another game. But as I teased at the beginning, we're going to go into some mailbag questions, which should take up a good amount of time. We're also going to get into some practice updates right after this. And of course, a couple other things that I have planned. So Penguins, Zach Aston Reese was back at practice with the Penguins on Wednesday. He had a maintenance day on Tuesday. Great news, he's back to his normal spot. Teddy Blueger continued to practice non-contact capacity, though I will say he looks to be fine. He's looking on track to be fine. Spoke to the media today, basically said for the first 7 to 10 days of his recovery, he was basically just, drinking his food out of a straw. And that's honestly, I've had my fair share of injuries, throughout my life. A broken jaw is I would never want to have something like that. That's probably an injury where no one would want to because, it affects so much. At least with, a broken leg, I know that's a lot of pain, but at least you can actually still eat your regular foods. This poor guy lost weight during the first week or two because he couldn't eat any solid food. Heck, he couldn't even eat pasta. That has to be one of the top 3 worst injuries an athlete could ever have. And apparently he said to the media today, his mouth was just gushing blood out after he was with head athletic trainer Chris Stewart. Even when they basically put a double towel into his mouth, the blood was bleeding through the first towel into the second one. That's just how serious this was. We are in the 4th week now of the 6 to 8 week time frame. It looks like potentially that he is a little bit ahead of schedule. Teddy was practicing with the penalty killers today in his normal spot. Again, wasn't taking contact. That will be the last, and that will be the last step so that he can come back. He's not going to play on Thursday against New Jersey. That's too soon. Could he play this weekend? Maybe. I personally don't think he will. I think next week is when we could see him back. It's still a little early in the time frame. It's good that he looks to be ahead of schedule. But I'm still not too sure when he is going to be officially coming back. Again, I would guess next week, but that is just a guess at the end of the day. Evgeni Malkin was able to speak to the media today. And he is always such a great quote. I absolutely love just whatever he says. I love when he was asked about Sidney Crosby's 500th goal, and he said, "You know what? Yeah, I hope he's assisting on my 500th when I score that." For reference, Gino has 430 goals right now, so he's about 70 away from getting the 500th. Hopefully, he will get to that point in the next couple of seasons. If he can pot 20 consistently for the next 3 to 4 years, he should get that pretty easily. Heck, if he pots 30 next year, he'll be only 40 away, max. He still has 30 games this year to score quite a few goals. Again, I do think he is going to hit that 500 career goal mark, though it's probably going to be maybe a bit later on in his career than Sid. He's also missed a lot of time to injuries and all this other stuff. And, he even said to the media, it's a special moment for sure for me, for Sid and for Letang. We played together for 16 years. He also said he's so happy for Sid. He deserves everything, every goal he scores. I'm glad to give him assists. And of course, as I just said, he hopes someday he can get an assist on his 500th. And again, I love how wholesome he is to the media. I love how close he is with Sid as well. It's just a brotherhood between the two. And, I really hope that he ends up retiring as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Other than that, there really is not much to come out of today's practice. They worked on the penalty kill, worked on the power play, did some individual drills. Nothing really earth-shattering. The lines were the same. If I can load those up here real quick for you all. Well, if I can on my social media. Let me just make sure that I can. Yeah. So, Kessel, Crosby, Rust, Heinen, Malkin, Carter, McGinn, Rodriguez, Kapanen, Ashton, Reese, Boyle, and Simone, Dumoulin, Letang, Pettersson, Marino, Matheson, Ruedel. Kasper Borgqvist was called up, though the main reason he was, I saw some people on social media saying it could be a trade. Maybe is someone else hurt, someone have COVID. No, they needed an extra forward. He's just the 13th guy. And then once Blueger comes back, I think he'll be sent down because, one of Simone or Boyle is going to come out of the lineup. And then when Jason Zucker comes back, whenever that is, I'm sure, I don't think Simone or Boyle are going to be sent down. It'll just be a 13th and 14th forward kind of thing. And, Mark Friedman right now, he's on a conditioning stint down in Wilkes-Barre. I think that's what he told Taylor Haas of DK Pittsburgh Sports. He just hasn't really played a lot this year. And, why would he, I guess, when the defense is so freaking healthy? There's just no spot for him in the top 6 right now, especially with how Chad Ruedel is playing. I know some people before the season tried to say that, it should be Friedman getting the reps over Ruedel, but, I liked his defensive ability better than Friedman. And, offensively, he's only has 1 goal this year, but, again, you're not going to pay that your number 6 guy to produce a lot of offense. That's why you have Chris Letang. That's why you have Mike Matheson, John Marino, maybe to an extent, Marcus Pettersson's been okay. You don't need all of your defensemen to be, pure offense. You need to have that mix. And, I think the Penguins have that and then some. So I'm perfectly fine with Friedman going down to Wilkes-Barre. I'm fine with O'Connor going down there and Zohorna as well. I saw that on the other day. And of course, Bjorkquist, he's not going to come into a game unless there is another injury. God forbid that is the case. So that wraps up this first segment of the podcast. Coming up in the second segment, I'm going to get into some listener mailbag questions. And then lastly, we're going to go into some Jason Zucker talk and why I think he is, more missed than some people realize, to say the least. But before we do that, this is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. If you haven't tried them, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. They're fluffy and they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They are a treat. All Built Bars as well are covered in 100% real chocolate. And yes, Puffs are included with that. They are low calorie and high protein. You can replace your candy bars with these as well. They're better than candy bars as well. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar and 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. You can go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow this show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So, excuse me, getting into some listener questions. I'm glad I was able to do this. I have not done one of these in a while. You all send in some pretty good questions. So, Jackson Hollister, thank you for sending this one in. And, we were redeeming, of course, a little bit. It was really cool to look at your cap-friendly lineup because, that would be a really fun Penguins lineup if that came to pass. He says, let's pretend the Penguins do trade for Brock Boeser. And, that would be a lot of fun. Obviously, I would love if they did that. He goes, would you want them to re-sign him for his qualifying offer of $7.5 million? Is he worth that much? Follow-up question. I sent you a DM with my cap-friendly created roster with Boeser. How feasible is that? Okay. So would I want the Penguins to re-sign him for $7.5 million? That's tough because I just don't know if, like, obviously what you sent to me, and I'll load up this lineup for the entire listeners of this podcast if I can go find the DM. If I just, I don't know where did I put this thing? I'm going to get in a sec, but I think right now I probably would say no, though this lineup does look pretty good. Gensel, Crosby, Rust, Puustinen with Malkin and Brock Boeser, Rodriguez, Carter, Alex Nylander, Drew O'Connor, Teddy Blueger, Brock McGinn, Duman Letang, POJ, John Marino, Matheson, and Ruedel, and then Jari and Anton Forsberg. So basically the changes that Jackson made, they were able to re-sign Rust. That line's intact. Puustinen is up. So it looks like he has Danton Heinen getting out of here. Kasperi Kapanen, he's walking. That's fine. Alex Nylander, he intrigues me. He's been really freaking good down in Wilkes-Barre. I will say that. I mean, he has been lighting it up down there at almost a point per game rate. I will be curious to see if he does get a look. I would not mind it with how he's been playing. Actually, no, excuse me. You have Rodriguez in there. But again, Heinen's gone. Kapanen's gone. You also have Aston Reese, it looks like, gone. I don't really know what they're going to do with him. That's a really good question, I think. Are they going to re-sign that player? Because they only signed him to a 1-year deal, and he's not making a lot of money. So, I mean, and he also has not played well offensively this year. Definitely not to what we saw last year where he was, looking like he was going to potentially be a 15-goal scorer over an 82-game season. He's barely even has 5 this year. I know how good he is defensively. You don't need all of your players to consistently score and produce, but this is still definitely not good, to say the least. And it also looks like you moved out Pedersen and DeSmith. You elevated POJ. This lineup does look pretty good. I will say that. You have Puustinen up on the top 6. That is an area that I don't think the team is going to do yet. Could he make the team next year? Sure. But I don't think it'll be in a top 6 role. I think it's going to be, bottom 6, maybe in, I don't know, Drew O'Connor's spot or something like that, with Blueger and McGinn. Heck, it could be an Alex Nylander spot playing with Jeff Carter and Evan Rodriguez. I think that would be a lot of fun. You do have Letang making $8 million. I wonder if he's going to get more than that. You have Brian Rust making $6 million on that deal. I think personally he's going to get more than that. Boeser at his 7.5. I think in that situation, Jackson, they may as well just keep Rust and then let Boeser go. Though, again, your lineup is pretty good. If this is the lineup that you gave me, I would be okay with that. But is this what Ron Hextall is going to do? I don't think so. So I'm not really sure how feasible it is that this would come to pass. I would love if they traded for Boeser. And if they did, I would be hesitant to take that qualifying offer. I would try to sign him for a little bit below that just because of what other pending contracts that this team has, especially with Chris Letang and Evgeni Malkin. So that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I would obviously love if they got Boeser, though I think if they did, it would be more so as a rental compared to something long-term. Though I will say this as well. If they let Brian Rust walk and they sign Boeser, then there's your replacement basically. But so, we'll have to see. I mean, I don't think Boeser is going to move here. He may move overall. Though it is a fun thing to speculate and think about. Gilbert the Goat asks, who are your top 3 targets for the deadline? Which demon should be moved so POJ can play next season? What is your biggest concern for the Penguins heading into the playoffs? Mine is their trouble finishing. Honestly, the biggest concern for the Penguins, I have 2 things. One of them is the finishing. I agree with that, Nick. I definitely think, his name is Nick. Gilbert the Goat is his @name. But their finishing ability is bottom 3rd of the NHL. That's not good enough. It's not going to be good enough come playoff time. I'm not going to say goaltending because I love what Tristan Jarry is doing right now. Excuse me. But I think my other biggest concern is just running into another hot goaltender. Say, the Penguins draw the Rangers. And I'm going to dial up some of these underlying numbers because I DM, one of my good buddies from Penguins Twitter all the time. And you look at Jay Fresh's stuff if you're a patron and you subscribe to his website and everything. For 5-on-5 expected goals for per 60, the Penguins rank 7th with 2.7. 5-on-5 expected goals against per 60. So the Penguins rank 4th at 2.26 against per game. That's one of the best marks in the league. Goals scored above expected, the Penguins rank 26th, minus 12.6 goals scored above expected. What that means is that they are not finishing their chances. The Rangers are 14th in that regard. And for 5-on-5 expected goals against per 60, the Rangers are 24th. They allow almost 3 expected goals against per game. And 5-on-5 expected goals for, they barely, it's barely over 2. So looking at those numbers, you think, oh, the Penguins have an easy series, right? Think again with how talented their top 6 is. And, you have God in net with Igor Shesterkin, who is Henrik Lundqvist's clone, who is going to come out and play like Ilya Sorokin did last year. That is probably above my finishing, ability concern for the Penguins. Just that they're going to get goalied again. And we've seen them get goalied numerous times over these last few years. Carey Price in the return to play was just unbelievable. Robin Lehner was ridiculous with the Islanders, but when the Islanders sweep the Penguins the year before that, obviously Sorokin stole the show last year. It's just been happening more frequently. And I'm like, okay, are the Penguins ever going to just, get a series where they can actually make a goalie look human and not have him play like God against them? So I think that is my number one concern heading into the playoffs, that they're just going to get stonewalled. Obviously, their finishing ability is up there as well. You also asked, which defenseman should be moved so POJ can play. That's a tough call, man. I mean, with how Matheson is going right now, I'd probably go Pettersson. But who's to say that Matheson will repeat this next year? And, Josh Yohe wrote today in The Athletic that the Penguins actually would not mind if someone took Matheson's contract off their hands just because it's so, it's for so many more years and it has a big cap hit. And that's weird because, he's obviously been so good this year, but, it's still interesting that, they're open to potentially moving him in a deal where, that salary's off their books and then they can just elevate POJ. So right now, I'd probably lean towards Pettersson that's going to be moved if Matheson keeps this up. Though if he turns back into a pumpkin, I would lean the other way and maybe thinking of getting him out of town. But I do agree, man. He needs to get some games in. I think PO is NHL ready, at least in my opinion. You also asked me who your top 3 targets for the deadline. Joe Pavelski, Connor Garland, and if I had to pick another one, honestly, JT Miller. I know it's weird that there's 2 from Vancouver, but they have a lot of really good players over there that are not being used. Right, I should say, and they're kind of just wasting their time away. I think Nick Paul would be, just outside my top 3. I think he'd be a really good acquisition. Just, good checking forward for, the top 9. You can play him really anywhere in the lineup. I personally would really like him if the Penguins wanted to trade for him. But yeah, I think Garland, Pavelski, and JT Miller are my top 3. At least for me. I mean, I would love Claude Giroux. He'd probably go up there if it were more feasible, but that's probably not going to happen. Wesley Reed says, if the Penguins can only afford to sign 2 out of the big 3, Malkin, Letang, or Rust, who is going to a new team? This is tough. And I like what you said, taking into account who's best for the team and who the team can do without, no matter how difficult. I've been saying this since the beginning. I love Brian Rust. I know he's making a strong case that they have to bring him back no matter what. But I still think that, I got to side with Letang and Malkin. I mean, these 2 have been in the franchise for almost 2 decades now. And Letang is at another level this year. I know people say, well, what if he falters? What if he regresses? He's going to get older. I understand that. And I know he's going to make a lot of money. But this guy is a freak during the offseason. No one knows his body better than he does. He works out a ridiculous amount. I honestly think he is fine. And he's going to be good for years to come. Malkin is at a point per game pace. I always want him to finish his career with Sidney Crosby. Brian Rust, just because there are a lot of free agents out there this offseason, I feel like he potentially can be replaced. Caught Philip Forsberg. I believe his contract is up after this year, and it looks like he might be available at the trade deadline. So he would also skyrocket up if the Penguins wanted to go out and get another pure shooter for the top 6. If he is actually available, it would probably be my top 3. Nick Forsberg, Pavelski, and Garland would be my top 3 targets. So don't think any of those are super feasible. I would love it, but we'll have to see. Dallas also took down Winnipeg tonight, but I totally understand that you want to keep Rust at all cost. It's a very valid opinion to have. I totally respect it. I just, I can't see a world where they get better if they keep him and one of the other 2, and then the other one walks. I mean, I personally think the team regresses next year. You also asked, what about a Kapanen / prospect or a second or third for Claude Giroux and a draft pick? Wesley, I would love that, but the Flyers are not going to trade with Pittsburgh. Remember when Ron Hextall was the GM in Philly, they traded Mark Streit to Tampa. He then went to Pittsburgh. That is how they just did not want to deal with each other. So I think Giroux personally is going to go to Colorado. That's my opinion, though. But it would be fun because pure chaos. But I just don't see it happening. Alan Teodor finally asked, if the Penguins traded for Phil Kessel, would Kapanen be evolved and would it be an upgrade? I think it would be a minimal upgrade, Alan, but I don't think he is the player that he used to be. That's my main thing. I'm not going to sit here and, call him washed or, all this other stuff. He's not lazy or anything, but he's just not the player that he used to be. I just don't think he is the player that the Penguins need right now. I think they need to aim higher, aim for a better player. He usually is known for a pure goal scorer, right? But he only has 6 of those this year. I know he's on a bad Coyotes team, but it's still, to me, it's not good enough, at least in my opinion. You said, thinking of how awesome it was seeing Crosby's 500th goal in person, what's the coolest Penguins moment you've witnessed in person? Okay, so I haven't been to a lot of Penguins games. Obviously, that comes with me not living in the city of Pittsburgh. I wish I did. I would go to all of them. I think the coolest one I got to see, just beating the Capitals in Washington and storming the steps. Just nothing gets better than that because all of the Capitals fans just go by. I'm not going to do it on stream. They give you the double bird. All of them are just so freaking mad. And it's the absolute best thing, excuse me, in the world. So that's probably the coolest one I've ever been to. I also got to see a 3-0 comeback in 2017 against the Buffalo Sabres. There were a ton of Buffalo fans at that game, and the Penguins were able to have a nice 3-goal comeback in the third period. I believe Connor Sherry had the game-winning goal, and then the Penguins were able to win that game with an empty netter 5-3. So those would probably be my 2 favorites or the coolest ones, but the Capitals one, it definitely, I think, takes the cake for me. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to go into some Jason Zucker talk real quick and why I think, he's a bigger loss than some think he is. Well, a bigger loss than I think some are saying. I apologize about that. But before we do that, football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance prompts to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, you can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why should you choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you can need from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. You can go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. And you can write Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That is rockauto.com. All right, welcome back to this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So I read a great article today from Adam Gretz of Pittsburgh. And it got me thinking a little bit. Excuse me. Sorry about that. But I think people take Zucker for granted just because he's not scoring like he used to. And I get it. He was the big acquisition a couple of years ago from Jim Rutherford. He was promised he was going to score a lot of goals. He scored 30 before. He scored a lot of 20-goal seasons. I know he hasn't done that a lot, but he's been one of their best players defensively, and he's been a rock solid playmaker. And if he made $3 to $3.5 million, no one would even care to try to dump on him, because again, he's been perfectly fine this year when he has been in the lineup. If I can, I can just get his hockey reference page, here real quickly. In 31 games, obviously, 6 goals, 13 points in those 31 games. But, in his last 2 games, so he played December 19th, had the assist against New Jersey. That was the game the Penguins won. After that, comes back a month later, 2 goals in that comeback against Vegas. Looks like he's putting it all together. Boom, the hernia happens. And it's just like, the poor guy just, he can't catch a break. But, I really liked this stat that I saw this morning from Adam. And he just basically touched on how, since for the last month or so, he's been one of their best defensive forwards and he's been out. And it's really, I think, just put a damper into the lineup. He is included as one of the 4 best, players in terms of expected goals against per 60 minutes. I know his offense, again, is not what people want, but he's still having a fine season. 13 points in 31 games. I know that's not a point per game pace, but over an 82 game season, that's close to, if I actually, just to make sure I had that right. That's close to almost a 20 goal pace over an 82 game season. I know right now if they were 62 games, because he's only played 31, that's a 12 goal pace, which is, fine and dandy. But, if he was able to score a little bit more during those next 10 games, he'd be on a 20 goal pace, which I'm fine with. I know I predicted that he would have 20 to 25 this year. Obviously, it sucks that injuries happen, but I still think this is a player that they miss. He forechecks really well down low. Again, he's really relentless with getting the puck back on his stick. And I also think he's a great fit for Evgeni Malkin's line. And I will die on that hill. I don't mind defending Jason Zucker. I'm not going to defend Kapanen because he's been way worse than Jason Zucker this year. But I have no problem, especially when someone plays his tail off every single shift. And, he gets the looks. It's just that his finishing ability has not been that good this year, which I think has killed him. So, I'm looking forward to when he's coming back. He hasn't started skating yet. He's probably not going to be back, I would say, for at least another 3 to 4 weeks, if not longer. We'll have to see. But I wanted to just take a few minutes to explain, just why the team misses him and why, I think he can't come back, soon enough, because, he is one of the 4 of the top 7 players in terms of expected goals against per 60. He is one of those best players defensively on the ice. So we'll have to see when he comes back. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'll be back on Thursday for a full game recap of the Penguins versus the Devils one. I did a little bit of a crossover on Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews. Go check that out on Thursday right before the game. We also do some score predictions as well. I did a couple of segments with Trey, and he's always a ton of fun to talk to. So that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'm back on Thursday.